Hello and welcome to my science project, which is a video on comparing cells to a process of making a new law in the US government. Starting with the cell, the first thing that you have to know is that every single living thing on Earth is entirely made up of cells, including us. Second thing is that human and animal cells are almost the same, while plant cells are a little more different, though they all have the same basic structure. The third thing that you have to know is that there are over 200 different types of cells only in the human body, so they can be pretty diverse. Cells have organs just like us, except you call a cell's organ an organelle, so organelle, organ cell. So our first organelle is going to be the membrane, which is like a plastic bag around the cell with lots of small holes. Human and animal cells are round and floppy, while plant cell membranes are more rigid because of their cell walls, and we'll go into that later. A cell membrane provides the cell with shape, structure, protection from inhibitors, and it also allows specific molecules in and out of the cell. Wait, but how does the membrane let specific molecules in and out? The molecules pass through pores in the membrane, and some pass through doing active transport and some doing osmosis. The difference is that active transport consumes energy while osmosis doesn't. It's not like osmosis can only occur with a specific pore or anything, it's all about which way you're traveling with what circumstance. This would naturally lead us to the question of what is diffusion? Diffusion is when a molecule travels from a more concentrated region to a less concentrated region. So, if a molecule travels from a more concentrated region to a less concentrated region through the membrane, you would not need energy for that, and that is called osmosis, and it's a type of diffusion. Likewise, going from a less concentrated region to a more concentrated region, you need energy, and that's active transport. Our next organelle is going to be the mitochondria, which makes energy for the cell by taking nutrients from the food we eat and turning that into energy-rich molecules for the cell, and that process is called cellular respiration. Some cells have over 2,000 different mitochondria, while others have none. More mitochondria can be made when one will get bigger and then split in half. This process is called mitochondrial replication, and it's super cool. Our next organelle is not an organelle. It's called an extra by some people. It's located just around the membrane of a plant cell, and it's made of cellulose, which is a special kind of sugar. It's the reason why trees stand tall. Now, what does it provide the plant cell with? It provides it with protection, support, structure, it enables growth, and it helps the plant cell maintain its shape. Basically, with a cell wall, a plant is going to be standing nice and tall, looking good, and without it, it's going to be a flop. Our next organelle is a chloroplast, which is only found in plant cells, and it's like an alien version of a mitochondria. It performs photosynthesis, which is the turning of sunlight into energy, and it's the reason why a plant might be colorful. Last but certainly not least is the nucleus, which has everything to do with DNA. DNA could be the reason that you're prone to obesity. It could be the reason that you have hair loss at the age of 21. DNA is made up of genes. So you could have a gene of eye color or a gene of likelihood of getting diabetes. For each gene, you'll have two alleles, one from your mom and one from your dad. So supposedly your dad has green eyes, and he marries your mother, who has brown eyes. They give birth to you, and now the question is, will you have brown eyes or green eyes? Do research about the Punnett square. Okay, so now your gene of eye color is going to have your mother's brown eye allele and your dad's green eye allele. Okay, I've often read that DNA tells the cell what to do. Well, not exactly. I mean, it does in a way. But there's also another thing that I've read, that DNA conducts all cellular activity. But how does it do that? Well, DNA conducts all cellular activity by conducting protein synthesis. And protein synthesis begins with the process of transcription, which is basically when DNA gets translated into mRNA. After that, the mRNA will be sent out of the nucleus into the cell on a journey to find ribosomes, which can either be found in endoplasmic reticulum or floating around the cell randomly. Once they find each other, they will lock onto each other like long-distance lovers meeting after 3 centuries. After a little reunion, tRNA, which is the nucleic acid, will go and get an amino acid and bring it to our romantic couple. And then the tRNA will go and get more. The ribosome will attach every amino acid, creating a chain called polypeptide that will soon eventually become a part of a bigger protein. Now you must be thinking, okay, so DNA conducts protein synthesis, but how is that the same thing as conducting all cellular activity? Well, proteins do literally everything in the cell. Okay, nucleus structure. Well, the nucleus has its own personal membrane with pores too, and it's called the nuclear envelope. It also has a storage for DNA, which is the nucleolus. In it is DNA in chromosomes, and it's also where ribosome halves are made, and I think it does more. And then we have the chromatin, which makes chromosomes, and I think it might do other stuff. And then the endoplasmic reticulum and those little red dots I'm drawing over there are ribosomes that are attached to it. Yay, you learned about the cell. So now we're moving on to one of the processes of making a new law in the U.S. government. Yay. Okay, so this process starts with the Congress. So there are two halves of the Congress. One of the halves is called the United States Senate, and the other one is called the United States House of Representatives. All it takes is one person from either of the halves to come out and say that they want a new law. But before that law is acknowledged by the whole Congress, a special committee will see if it's worthy of being addressed. If they don't set it aside and think it's worthy, then they will send it to the whole Congress to vote on. If the Congress gets a tie while voting, then the Vice President of America will break it. But supposedly they both say yes, then they will each send a bill to Committee Number 2, and Committee Number 2 will see if there are any differences between the bills. Again, supposedly they say that there are no differences between the bills. Then they will send a final bill to two very handsome young, actually not necessarily young, they will send the bill to the Vice President of America and the Speaker of the House, who is second in line from the Vice President. They will sign the bill and then send that bill to the President. And now he has three options. Number 1, accept it and it will become law. Number 2, veto it. And number 3, ignore it. If more than 2/3 of the Congress want it while he vetoes it, it can still become law. And if he ignores it for over 10 days, it can also become law. I think that the cell membrane and the carrier proteins, which are proteins that assist in active transportation sometimes, is Committee 1. I think this because just as the membrane protects the cell by not letting in harmful things, does the Committee Number 1 not let in laws that can harm the government in any way. I also think this because the membrane gives the cell a shape. Well, metaphorically, Committee 1 shapes the government by clearly demonstrating what issues the government pays attention to. I'm going to give you a hat. I think that the cell wall would be the person who starts the whole process from the Congress in the first place. I think so because one of the cell wall's main jobs is to support the cell. And of course, this person supports this process because they want their law to be heard and they want it to happen. For me, I think that the nucleus would be the Congress, and because you can have two nucleuses actually, the Congress and the President. I think so because it's specifically written in the Constitution that the President's job is to serve and deliver the Constitution. And later I'll explain why I think the Constitution is equivalent to DNA. The Congress originally had more power over the President, but now they're pretty much an equal match. So we're going to have two nuclear envelopes. So number 1 is going to be the Secret Service, which is like this really cool like agency, like no one really knows who they are, and they like protect their president. And then the Congress, they have the Capitol Police, which is not so secret or that cool. I think that the DNA would be the Constitution. I think so because the Constitution has all the information on what to do in it, and it gives the U.S. an identity, just like the DNA gives the cell an identity. I think that the mRNA would be the President and the Congress's speeches and announcements, and etc. I think this because that would have to be another version of the Constitution no matter what. Okay, the mitochondria. This part was a little harder because I had to ask myself, what is the energy for this process, and what keeps it going? And I came up with this apparently. The nutrients that the mitochondria takes in is the fact that everyone in this process has a high position in society and economy. The mitochondria would be their minds taking in this fact. The energy-rich molecules it produces will be the motivation to keep this job. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I seriously hope you learned something from this. I'd like to give special thanks to my dad and Mr. McCurdy for motivating me to, do better and to improve and continue. My sister for teaching me a little bit about the cell and helping me with some technical issues that I was having, and Sadma El-Samari for recording some parts. And I seriously hope you learned something from this and that it was a help to you and that you found it interesting. So yeah, thank you. Bye.